Hi guys, Aceface back with another video for you, and today I've got something a little bit of a blast from the past. I'm coming back at you with some videos around how to beat certain armies. So guys, before we get started, I just wanted to point you in the direction of a few other ways you can follow me. I'm probably most prominent over on our other channel, which is Twisted Dice. So if you haven't already, please do go over and subscribe to Twisted Dice. There are weekly battle reports over on there, high quality, dice by dice, great looking armies and great looking boards. So I can't recommend highly enough that you go over there and check out some of the best battle reports you're likely to see anywhere. We have got every single army covered, so no matter what you're into, you'll get an opportunity to see it over there. And I'm on the channel every other week or once a month, something like that. If you'd like to kind of follow me further, you can follow me on Instagram. I post a lot of my work in progress. You can see this guy and how I'm getting on with working on Tiny, as well as lots of other future projects and tournaments, pictures, all sorts of stuff. I'm very actively posting over on Instagram, so you can check me out there. If you search Aceface, you'll find me there without any trouble whatsoever. If you'd like to follow me further, we have a really cool Patreon page where at just $1 a month and upwards you can support the channel, support what I do here, as well as over on Twisted Dice. We've got a really active Discord group where lots of people are sharing lists, tactics ideas, hobby updates, you name it, and I can interact with you guys directly. I can volunteer any support and help, as well as I learn loads from the guys in there as well. It's a really cool group of guys. So you know, if you want to kind of support me further, as I said, from starting from just $1 a month, you can support me over there. If you'd like to support me further there, we've got opportunity to get some Twisted Dice or some Aceface dice, as well as up to t-shirts and all sorts of other stuff, and I'm looking to do monthly giveaways there when we get up to sort of 10 plus Patreons, and hopefully that's something that we can get to pretty quickly. There's been loads of interest recently, so it's great to have you guys there. And if you have just stumbled upon the channel, thank you very much for watching. Please do hit that sub button, and the like helps me out tons. But that's enough chit chat. Let's go into this video. So today I'm going to talk about how to beat. So this is a series that I put together a long time ago when I started on YouTube. It was very popular back in the day, but other things got in the way, and as you do, it got put on the back burner. But I've had a lot of people ask recently, how do Tyranids in particular beat certain armies? So we thought we'd just bring it back, and we'd go back to the old school and we'd talk about how to beat. So a little preface to this is tailoring a army build to a certain counter, a certain army, can be dangerous because it can make you susceptible to losing to other army builds. So bear in mind that what we're going to talk about are very transfixed on certain armies, so they won't necessarily be lists or tactics that are take all comers, which we can definitely do videos on going forward. But today, in the very first in the series, we're going to cover what is my #1 question around building lists and armies for Tyranids, is how to beat knights. So knights are a bit of an Achilles heel for Tyranids. We don't have a lot of high strength weaponry that's easy accessible, that's accurate, that we can put on the board in high volumes. We also don't have very many infantry units that find it easy to get into combat with knights and do mass damage. It's very tricky for us. So we tend to find that we can quite often come up a little bit wanting when it comes to playing knights. But I'm here to give you some advice and give some guidance on how you can counter knights. So if in your particular meta you're coming across a lot of knights, a lot of armies of knights, then hopefully some of this advice will help you. And at the end of these videos, I'm going to share with you a list that I've produced which is specifically for dealing with knights. And when I talk about knights, I'm talking about a whole army of knights. So I'm I'm not talking about a plug and play Castellan knight, or just a knight or 2 knights in an imperial list. That's very different. That's much more of a well-rounded army, and that takes a different type of army build. But in that middle field, in that kind of gatekeeper, in that kind of very tough lists, we're finding 4 or 5 knights, and that's really difficult for the Tyranids to deal with. So the things that you need to come up with straight away is, don't necessarily think that the way to beat these knights is to be able to kill the knights, get rid of them off the table, face them one-on-one, because the reality is we don't really have the tools to do that. So trying to go at that from that angle, you're going to find you'll come out and you will come unstuck. So straight away thinking, right, I want to put my army full of heavy hitters, things like the Tyranid with the rupture cannon, bringing in potentially the barbed hurricane. These are the sort of units that you might think straight off the top of your head, well, these are the units I want to bring in, because these are the units that are going to go toe to toe with that knight. The likes of carnifexes, like close combat carnifexes. The list goes on. We've got a lot of strong monsters that can do damage to knights. I mean, the Trigon with hot dice can do severe damage to a knight. It has the damage capability, but the odds are that it will come unstuck. But more importantly, the odds are that those big creatures will come unstuck before they even get to the knight. Those Tyranid with rupture cannons are going to get shot off the board before they get a chance to actually really do the damage that they need to. So don't always fall into that trap. Now, there's nothing wrong with bringing big stuff that can do damage to knights, but when you're building your list, bear in mind that they are better at it than you, they hit harder than you, they shoot better than you, and they've generally got more wounds than you, and they are higher toughness than you most of the time. So they're winning that battle. So trying to go toe to toe with them, unfortunately, is not the best tactic. The best tactic is to play what we're very good at, and that is numbers. That is board saturation. That is playing those objectives, and that is being irritating. But we can still play with some aggressive tools in there as well. So one of our biggest tools is Swarm. And we've got some great swarm tools in the likes of both Hormagaunts and Termagants. You can do it with Gene Stealers a bit, but Gene Stealers are far too expensive, and actually, again, unless you rush in there and you manage to avoid all Overwatch and you get in with 20 Gene Stealers and a Broodlord buffing their hits, and you roll quite hot, you're still not really going to kill a knight. You're just not. So this is, you need to bear that in mind. You need, that it's unlikely that you're going to have that much joy with that. So your best bet is to go with Termagants or Hormagaunts. I would suggest Termagants, because in this type of build to counter knights, you don't need to be aggressive. You don't necessarily need to be up in their face straight away. What you need to be doing is advancing into the middle of the board to take those objectives and take that board presence, but you don't need to necessarily be getting into combat with them or getting close enough so they can get in combat with you, because you've got to bear in mind that they are not only going to do damage to you in shooting, but they're going to do a lot of damage to you in combat, and because of their stamping feet, they will grind even high volumes of horde down. What you want to be doing is making them come at you while you take the board, so they aren't necessarily getting opportunities to fight you as well as shoot you. You want to be thinking about that. That's important. So bear that in mind when you're building your lists. So Termagants for me are a great one. You're also going to want to try and make those knights have a harder time doing damage to you, and there's a few ways you can do that. One is by hiding your guys, obviously, but two is by making them -1 to hit. So using both a couple of tools, so either using aggressive, so going for making the knights harder for them to hit you with psychic powers, or using a Malanthrope or Venomthropes to keep your guys alive by giving them -1. That works really well. Sometimes these days it's better to go for Venomthropes, because Venomthropes give you a much bigger spread. I would say in a list that's designed to tackle knights, it's probably not a bad thing to have both. Spread that volume of -1 to hit with the Venomthropes, but also have a reliable, untargetable Malanthrope there to sit there to make sure that you're getting that, even if the knights concentrate on the Venomthropes. So I think that works quite well to have the dual ability, because if you've got enough redundancy of that -1, then eventually you get to the stage where potentially the knight player is going to go, well, they're going to have a -1, I'm just going to focus down and put up with the fact that I'm going to be on a -1. So it's a tactic to definitely to consider. That redundancy of -1 will help you to survive better. It's also not a bad idea to be looking at potentially the Leviathan as your high fleet, because having a 6+ invuln save on hordes and hordes of bodies that are within range of a synapse creature, which they're always going to be because they're going to need to be fearless, is a really good way of just maximising that fact of, you know, yes, they're going to put a lot of shots into you, yes, they're going to stamp you quite a lot, but actually if you've got a 6+ invuln save, you're just maximising your survivability. It really works well. You're also going to want to be putting, you know, Catalyst on these units to give them that 5+ after save. There's lots of things that you can do to just make it irritating, and that's what you're doing with this playstyle, is you're making it irritating. You want to make it difficult for those knights to get through your troops, and that's what this is doing. You want to be looking at characters that can do damage to the knights, so I really advise Old One Eye. He is a great anti-knight unit, but because he's obviously that character, he's got that character rule, and because he's below the wound threshold, he can sit behind these units. Normally, I'd always advise that he would be Kraken because of his speed, but actually that knight's coming at you anyway, because your army is revolving around troops, and is revolving around ball presence, and it's revolving around swarm. So he's going to have to come at you, and that's when you can counter him with One Eye. You know, you don't want Old One Eye steaming into the mist and getting shot to pieces before he even gets there. You want him, you know, he's in a position where he can then strike at the right time and really do the damage. The other unit really to make sure that you're thinking about is Hiveguard. They've got that magic strength 8 on their impaler guns, and that means that they are absolutely prime for dealing with knights. They also have the ability to hide and not be seen, so they're not going to get picked out by the knights with everything. Knights do have some missiles that do ignore line of sight, but there's not a lot of them. So having a unit that can safely sit out of sight and pick off and do damage to knights with like shoot once, shoot twice, that's very handy. Those guys, you generally want them to be in Chronos to maximise that effectiveness of those guns, but definitely at least one big solid unit of those that's double shooting each turn is almost a must for your army to take on knights. And one kind of last little bit of tech before we move on to the list that I'd heavily recommend is looking at is Biovores. Now Biovores are a little bit expensive now. They're not as efficient points as they used to be. Yes, they do mortal wounds, but the real use for these guys is move blocking against knights. So, you know, this is a little bit of high level tech, but something that is really handy. So every time those Biovores miss with their target, they're able to put down a Spore Mine. Now that Spore Mine doesn't count from any reserve points, so you can do this as much as you like. And those Spore Mines, what you can do is then position them in a place where they are stopping the knights from moving, because knights can fall back across infantry, but they can't go over swarm, or Spore Mines don't have the infantry keyword, so they can't fall back off them anyway, but they also can't walk over infantry, they can just fall back over it. So because of that, what you can do with these guys is you can use them as move blocking units. They're just an irritating little 3 unit that the knight player can't get any victory points from. But what they do is they stop that knight from getting anywhere near your guys. And if you've missed with a few Biovores, suddenly you've got a wall of these individual units that the knight can't get rid of until it gets to its shooting phase. So it's stopped its movement, so it's stopped it advancing on the middle of the table where you're congesting the board. So if you know you're going to be playing knights, and you know you're going to be playing knights that are going to want to, you know, get in your face, that are going to want to move to the middle of the board, it's a great way to deal with them, with these move blocking spore mines. So even though those Bivores generally are not worth their points now at 50 points a model, when you're against knights, they get their points back every time because of that efficientness of, one, doing some mortal wounds, but two, really blocking those knights in and stopping them from getting to the middle of your army. So there's some kind of key units and some things to really factor in your armies when you're playing against a knight orientated list. So let's jump in and let's talk about a list that I've come up with that you can try if you're playing against a knight meta, or you know you're coming up against knights. Okay, right, so let's talk about this. And again, I preface this with, this is not going to be the best army to play against everybody. This is designed to play against knights and designed to beat knights. So we're going to go with 2 battalions for this. Now the first battalion is going to be a Leviathan battalion, and I've explained why. So the Leviathan is going to give everything that's within synapse range a 6-up invuln, which is really, really handy. So in the battalion I have 3 HQs. I've got a Malanthrope for the exact same reason as I've said. So the Malanthrope is going to give you that -1 to hit. He's got quite a few wounds, so he's going to be quite good against those shield breaker missiles. He's just a really solid unit. Bit expensive at 140 points, but in this build he's so effective, I think he's worth having. I've then got a Neurothrope. Now Neurothrope is going to give you some psychic powers. It's another reliable, good invuln save. Psyker, but a synapse creature that's going to provide that web. And then I've got Old One Eye. Now Old One Eye is a bit useless in a Leviathan detachment, but it fits in with the rest of this, and it's nice to have him there, slowly moving up behind your horde, able to pounce at any time and really deal with a knight. I then have 4 units of 30 termagants. These are your bread and butter guys. These ones are going to sit in the middle of the board, they're going to advance forward, and they are going to hold those objectives and say to the knight player, you need to chew through 120 of us. Off you go, good luck. We're all going to have -1 and we're all going to have a 6-up invuln. Off you go. And don't get me wrong, that is very possible. A knight army can do that, but with the other tricks we're going to put in place here, along with that Old One Eye that's sitting around those gaunts ready to fight them when they come in, you know, you've got the opportunity that actually they'll be alright. And there's some tricks with those termagants you can pull as well that we'll talk about. I've then gone for 4 Venomthropes, so a unit of 4 Venomthropes. So that's going to spread across the line. That's going to make sure you give all those termagants that good save, or that -1 to hit. So that's the first battalion. The second battalion, I've gone for a Kronos battalion, and I've gone for the Neurothropes. So I've gone for 2 of those. Again, just really solid synapse creatures. I still think that they're a better bet than their prime. This is mainly just to fill the battalion, so they don't have a massive use, but being able to get fairly reliable smite off is handy. I've then gone for 3 units of Ripper Swarm, some minimum units, and the reason why I've gone for them is actually what you want is, again, you're using all your tactics to kind of hold that middle ground. These Ripper Swarms can then deep strike into corners to get things like Line Breaker, to hold objectives that are in the corners, to just be nuisances. They're small models, they can hide well, they're just great at being able to kind of do that little work. So hold them back until turn 3, drop them in, the knights just won't be able to deal with them because there's just too many things going on. Then I've got a full maximum unit of 6 Hive Guard. These are going to hide in a ruin, these are going to hide out a line of sight. These are the ones that are going to do, you're hoping to do the maximum damage to these knights. As soon as they come into the middle ground, which is where they want to be, because they want to try and take these objectives, this is where all your gaunts are going to congest them, but also this is where the Hive Guard are going to start picking them up and start doing damage with that double shooting. And then rounding out the list, I have 3 units of Biovores, I've got 2 units of 3, and I've got 1 unit of 2. As I said, these guys are going to be there to either do mortal wounds or to be putting move blocking spore mines down. And you want to do this in a couple of ways. So like if you want to try and maximise your damage, you're going to stay these guys still. Again, they're going to be hiding, and they're going to be hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s. But what you can do is move them. So you can move these guys, and then suddenly they're hitting on 5s, which means they're creating those spore mines much more effectively, and making that wall of annoyance in front of those knights. And that comes to 1,997 points. And what it gives you there, it gives you loads of bodies to take those objectives. It gives you some hard-hitting units in the form of the Old One Eye, as well as the Hive Guard to actually do some damage. What you can use with the Termagants is when the knights do come crashing in, you want to be using your caustic blood. So every time you're dying, you're also on a roll of 6. You're doing a mortal wound, which is really handy. You know, so that's gonna definitely be a useful tool as well. And you're gonna play the mission. And if you do that, if you follow those instructions, you know, you don't go too aggressive with One Eye. Wait until it's the right time to pounce. He will, with his, you know, be able to fight twice when he dies, whatever it might be. He is going to do the damage to kill a knight on his own, or get pretty close. Then you're going to have the ability from the Hive Guard to be slowly picking away and killing knights off. You've got your gaunts to hold those objectives, and you've got those Biovores to really keep those knights from moving and just being a real pain. So give that list a go if you're having trouble against knights. Let me know how it works for you. If it doesn't work, tell me. In my experience, it's perfect against knights. It really does the business. It's got some psychic offense there. It's got bodies. It's got everything you need to counter knights. But always bear in mind that that is against a pretty much a pure knight list. It becomes harder when it's starting to mix, so the knight army is losing its problems by taking in stuff to patch that up. But against a knight army or a predominantly knight army, this will do really well and effective. So hopefully that's helpful. I'm going to end the video here. I'll be back with another video real soon on how to beat another army. Hopefully this has been useful for you, and I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.